عارف هول بيحكي.
Good afternoon. You're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Lynn Tamim, and these are today's top stories. Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi says only the Lebanese army can enter the border town of Arsal, as Hezbollah said it was ready to liberate the town. The families of Lebanese servicemen being held by jihadis reopened 2 roads in downtown Beirut after blocking them earlier in the day. And the U.S. condemns China's land reclamation in the South China Sea, saying it is out of step with international rules. Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi says only the Lebanese army can enter the border town of Arsal, following comments made by a Hezbollah official who said the party was ready to liberate the town. He said Arsal is a cherished part of this nation and not an isolated island, as some have tried to portray it, and it is delusional to think we will accept any attack on the town. Arsal is a red line. Rifi called on Hezbollah to withdraw from Syria and stand behind the Lebanese army in defense of the country. He also called on the group to cease its support for Iranian expansionism in the region. Commenting on the year-long presidential vacuum, Rifi said a presidential candidate who embodies Iran's expansionist ambitions will not be tolerated, asserting that Iran would fail in its attempt to take grip of Lebanon. The families of Lebanese servicemen being held by jihadis have reopened 2 roads in downtown Beirut after blocking them earlier in the day to protest the lack of transparency in negotiations to secure the relatives' release. Hussein Youssef, the spokesman for the committee representing the captives' relatives, said the road was reopened as a gesture of goodwill. He warned, however, that protests will resume if the families sense any negligence in the government's approach to negotiations. The road closures came a day after General Security Chief Major General Abbas Brahim expressed his optimism on the outcome of negotiations to win the release of the captives. Hundreds of protesters have marched in Beirut demanding greater protections for victims of domestic violence. Activists, civil society groups and media personnel rallied in front of the National Museum at 2 p.m., marching towards the Justice Ministry. Relatives and friends of female victims of domestic abuse carried out protests that featured pictures of the victim, the date of the crime, the man accused and his judicial status. The demonstration was organized almost 2 weeks after Sarah Al-Amin, the latest victim in an ongoing epidemic of violence against women, was shot dead by her husband. Amin's murder has sparked outrage in Lebanon, which has seen numerous crimes against women in recent years, prompting women's rights organization Kafa to organize the demonstrations. The U.S. State Department has urged its citizens to avoid all travel to Lebanon because of ongoing security concerns. In a statement, the State Department said U.S. citizens living and working in Lebanon should understand that they accept the risks of remaining in the country and should carefully consider those risks. The statement says 2 U.S. citizens have died in bombings in the past 2 years and 2 have been kidnapped, according to information available to the U.S. government. The last 2 decades have witnessed world events that have tarnished the Arab world's image. Takrim was established to amend this perception by honoring Arab achievers. Takrim's main objective is identifying Arabs who have excelled in their field and inspired others in their quest for cultural, educational, scientific, environmental, humanitarian, social and economic developments in the Arab world. Takrim Jury Board has recently convened in London and deliberated on the 2015 laureates in the following fields: young entrepreneur, humanitarian and civic services, environmental development and sustainability, scientific and technological achievement, innovation in education, culture excellence, outstanding Arab women, corporate leadership and international contribution to Arab society. The names of the laureates will be disclosed during the Foundation's annual awards ceremony, which will be held in Dubai next November. A conference titled The Arab Marshall Plan, Partnership and Cooperation for a Better Future for the Middle East was held at the invitation of think tank House of the Future in collaboration with Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. Qatar Party leader Amin Jmayel spoke during the opening ceremony.
I think the idea of Maison du Futur is great. because we are living here in a wonderful region of the world with one of the oldest histories mankind has. And now we have here the region with the biggest problems at all. When I think at the war in Syria, I think at IS and the crimes which are done. And so I think it's very important to discuss what are the chances to make a good future, in which way we can go over the enemies of religion, the enemies of nations, how to come to a way that all human beings can live in a good way. And that is necessary to discuss, and so it's good to have such a conference.
Well, the House of Future was an important think tank before the civil war, and hopefully will be again, especially in Lebanon and for the region where governments cannot do all things. We had traditionally not so strong governments, so it's up to think tanks to develop policy ideas to help governments to shape the future. That is where I see the important role of Maison du Futur.
At least 75 people wounded, dozens. At least 75 people were wounded, and dozens were. At least 75 people were killed, and dozens were wounded in a series of barrel bombs dropped by Syria's government. The deaths occurred in two separate incidents when helicopters dropped explosives-filled barrels, which are deemed illegal under international law. This comes the day after rebel fighters seized the last government-controlled town in the country's northwestern province of Idlib, after government forces retreated to their coastal bases, according to activists and a monitoring group. The Syrian coalition known as the Fatah Army seized the town of Ariha on Thursday, giving the group full control of Idlib province. The Fatah Army is made up of several armed groups, notably the Nusra Front. Sources say dozens of Syrian soldiers were killed in the clashes. And coming up next, dizzying temperatures kill hundreds in India. More after the break. Welcome back. Saudi-led airstrikes pummeled an airbase in the Yemeni capital Sana'a in the early hours of this morning, leading to fires and secondary explosions at the site that lit up the night sky. Yemeni media said 25 people were killed and 134 were wounded on Friday in airstrikes across the country. The Saudi-led coalition began airstrikes in Yemen on March the 26th in a campaign to restore Yemeni President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi to power. He fled in March after Iranian-backed Houthi rebels seized the capital Sana'a in September and then thrust into central and south Yemen. Yemen's former president Ali Abdullah Saleh told an Arab television channel on Friday that his successor Hadi lost legitimacy when he fled to Sana'a and later fled Aden to rebase in neighboring Saudi Arabia. Saleh stepped down in a deal brokered by the Gulf powers after protests in 2011 against his three-decade rule showed little sign of fizzling out. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif has arrived at the Intercontinental Hotel in Geneva, where he was expected to meet with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry for talks on a possible agreement under which Iran would curtail its nuclear program in exchange for relief from economic sanctions that have crippled its economy. 6 major powers, including the United States, Britain, France, Germany, Russia, and China, and Iran, reached a tentative framework for a nuclear pact on April the 2nd, but several issues remain unresolved. The United States, Israel, and other nations suspect Iran is using its civil nuclear program as a cover for an effort to develop atomic weapons. Iran denies this, saying its program is for solely peaceful purposes. France has warned on Wednesday it was ready to block a final breakthrough deal unless Tehran provided UN nuclear inspectors access to all installations, including military bases. The U.S. has condemned China's land reclamation in the South China Sea, saying it is out of step with international rules. Defense Secretary Ash Carter has called for an immediate and lasting halt of the works, which was immediately slammed as groundless and not constructive by a Chinese military officer in the audience of the annual Shangri-La Dialogue and International Security Conference in Singapore. Carter's comments came as defense officials revealed that China had put 2 large artillery vehicles on one of the artificial islands it is creating in the South China Sea. The discovery, made at least several weeks ago, fuels fears in the U.S. and across the Asia-Pacific that China will use the land reclamation projects for military purposes. Senator John McCain said he's proposed that the United States provide hundreds of millions of dollars to help train and equip the armed forces of Southeast Asian countries faced with Chinese territorial challenges.
A provision for $425 million to be devoted to helping nations in the region conduct exercises, acquire equipment, take various steps to increase their defensive capabilities. And we also will be proposing probably next week on the floor to relax the embargo on the Vietnamese arms acquisition to ease the ability of the Vietnamese to acquire weapons with which to defend themselves, particularly in the maritime area. Those are some of the actions that we believe needs to be taken in light of their latest information concerning the emplacement of weapons on the reclaimed land. And to say that it is anything but an unstable regime in North Korea would be a misreading of a very temperamental, very unstable young man, rather rotund young man. And I think that we are not paying as much attention to North Korean behavior, particularly in their development of the nuclear capability, both the weapons themselves and the ability to deliver them.
Moving on to India, dizzying temperatures have caused water shortages in thousands of villages and killed hundreds more people over the past day, driving the death toll from a weeks-long heat wave to at least 1,826. Hospitals were urged to give emergency treatment to people suffering from heat stroke, as authorities canceled doctors' leave, set up water distribution points, and warned people not to venture out. Meteorological officials have called the heat wave severe and warned that it would continue for at least another 2 days across a huge swath of the South Asian country, from Tamil Nadu in the south to the Himalayan foothill state of Himachal Pradesh. Most of those killed by heat-related conditions, including dehydration and heat stroke, have been in the southern states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, where 100 people died on Thursday as temperatures hovered at about 43 degrees Celsius. Thousands of water tankers were delivering supplies to more than 4,000 villages and hamlets facing acute water shortages in the central state of Maharashtra. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Justice Minister Ashafrifi says only the Lebanese army can enter the border town of Arsal, as Hezbollah said it was ready to liberate the town. The families of Lebanese servicemen being held by jihadis reopened 2 roads in downtown Beirut after blocking them earlier in the day. And the U.S. condemns China's land reclamation in the South China Sea, saying it is out of step with international rules. Those are your headlines for today. I'm Linda Tamim, and I wish you all a very nice weekend.
مش عارف